Well, we had a nice operating session this weekend, and so I thought I'd show you some of the highlights of it. Hi, this is Burr Stewart. Welcome to part 89 of my continuing series of model railroad operations videos. As you can see here, we had quite a few people in the room, about 12 to be exact, and I took video from different angles, set up some cameras, and the fidelity isn't incredibly good, but it's good enough to enjoy some serious operation. I hope you'll find this as fun as I do.
The next time I have a crew, I'll remember that. You have one for Sky and one for Tacoma.
As you probably know from watching my other videos, this model railroad layout is in HO scale, and I modeled the 1973 era of the Burlington Northern Railroad in the Seattle region. This is called the Rainbow era because the Burlington Northern hadn't repainted all their engines beyond green yet. So we have all kinds of different colors, as you can see here. There are these two trains passing in downtown Seattle. We've got Northern Pacific, Great Northern, SP&S, and I guess that's what we have so far. Moving to the right, that's obviously a southbound train with a bunch of lumber products coming from British Columbia. Looks like a transformer to be repaired. And then this northbound train, with any luck, will have some empty bulkhead flats, and you'll be able to immediately see that it's a northbound and not a southbound. Of course, this is the section going through downtown Seattle, and I'm very proud of my grade crossing bells, but of course we should also have the flashing lights. We'll get to that eventually. Underneath this scene, you can see the Milwaukee diesels that are in the Milwaukee engine terminal. We're not going to run those today, but that's all right. Now, this train that just came in has come in and is now being switched.
James are out of Interbay. Can I get a warrant to back up?
Bang! And the switch engine should be apparent on the end of this cut of cars.
Should I wait on until...
We'll see.
Ask the yardmaster and see what he thinks. And if he's good with it, I'm good with it.
There it is. It's pushing the end of a train that had recently come in. The train that we were originally watching is waiting until the switcher gets out of the way and they're allowed to come in and occupy one of the arrival departure tracks. We have 3 arrival departure tracks in this model of the Interbay yard, even though the prototype only had 2, because it's such a busy model railroad. I thought we needed 3. And you'll see why later in the video, maybe. That switcher obviously doesn't have enough horsepower to push that long train. It's spinning its wheels. I don't know what the big holdup is here. Did you see that headlight go off and the engine short out? This is typical of what I call reality model railroading. I had accidentally flipped the incorrect switch under this train, and so it had the points thrown against it. Eventually I figured that out and fixed it. But these are the kinds of things that go on. And when you're trying to run trains and you have a lot of people in the room, lots of mistakes get made. Well, we got the light back on and we got the switch thrown the proper way, so now we should be able to come into the yard. Meanwhile, you can imagine the frustration of all those cars waiting at the grade crossing. What are those jokers doing?
There's no phone in Tacoma, so I couldn't do it.
Well, I probably heard it. Too low for me, actually.
Now we're crossing over from Main 2, which is on the close to the wall there. What you might call Main 1, closer to the aisle, but actually Interbay Yard only has one mainline track. It goes from double track down to single track right here. And so these engines are entering the yard, and it appears that they're taking the B track, which is the second arrival departure track over from the main line. We have an auto import loading and unloading facility at Pier 9091 right near this yard, and you can see I've modeled that on the left. The cars.
Oh, okay.
So is that all right?
Talk to your yard master.
Yeah, he told me to do that. And
Keep an eye out for those tank cars. We'll see them being switched by the yardmaster in a few minutes.
around me, if anyone's coming
Now we'll just
southbound.
take a run through of this train and see what's on it.
No, he's coming in. Burr's coming in the beach route.
Nothing too obvious. You can't tell that the Thrall box car there in green, the Weyerhaeuser car, you can't tell that it's empty, but I'm telling you, if it's northbound, it's probably empty. And that Frisco car was recently weathered by Brian Elchlip and is one of the most beautiful cars on the layout. The caboose, of course, is very nice as well. And one of the reasons to model 1973 is every train needs a caboose.
All right, we're tied down.
And as soon as Burr cuts away and puts his power away, and I pull back, then I'll have you come into 4-rail.
Where are you at?
I'm
What are you
blocked
working on?
here.
Well, we finally cleared all the grade crossings, and we're in the arrival departure. Now, what's going to happen after this is the switcher is going to come and
Put the caboose away and the caboose.
bang! Take the train apart. And probably do it in sections, because the switcher can't pull the entire train because he doesn't have enough horsepower. So if we move up here, we'll probably see where the yardmaster uncoupled the first cut. Yeah, you see that? He just took the first 5 cars to work on. Well, now we are going to engage in a little parallel play. I happened to be over on the other side of the layout and saw these 2 trains going in the same direction. Isn't that cool? One of my favorite aspects of an operating session. This is a northbound train. Crossing the Stillaguamish River. And heading up towards Burlington. Now those are Southern Pacific run-through engines. I'm not sure why they'd be going all the way to Burlington. I think I need to continue to instruct the hostler in the yard there that we don't normally send Southern Pacific locomotives that far north. Now here we're entering the Burlington yard. I think we're going to give you a run by of this train too, just for fun. Those ore jennies full of limestone are used for the rock train. It comes along and stops here and picks those up and then heads south. But we're not running the rock train today. You'll just have to keep coming back, and one of these days we'll make a video about that. That's a respectable little train. Why not? And of course underneath you can see the Stacy yard, lots of activity, and on the left is the Bayside yard, also with lots of activity. Here's another parallel move. We have that same Southern Pacific led train going into the Bellingham staging yard while we have the switcher moving in the same direction down in Interbay yard. And see, he's pulling those 2 tank cars that I told you to watch for. These are the ones that came off that train we just watched terminate. You with me? And here's the yardmaster's control panel. You can never have enough room for sorting car cards. This is the action from an operating session. You run a train, you run it into a yard, the yardmaster pulls the train apart, sorts the cars for where they need to go, and then we create another train to go to wherever that place is. Now here we have a different angle, which some of you have enjoyed in the past videos. I stuck a camera on the Emerson Street Bridge looking down into the Interbay yard and enjoyed some of Scott's yardmastering here with this new Athearn SW1500 switcher, which runs really well. I'm going to speed this up a little bit, so the video will go faster, since it's really a bunch of back and forth action. Now again, Those two tank cars tell us that this cut came off that train that we just saw arrive. As you know, I really like the zigzag action of cars going through yard ladders like this. I don't know why, it's just mesmerizing and squiggly. We can't know every detail about why he's uncoupling which cars and putting them on which track, but I'm sure that would be very tedious if we started explaining that. You'll just have to sign up for an operating session near you and enjoy model railroading. I'm going to hope that those two big tank cars are empty because he sure is dragging them back and forth a lot. I guess it's part of the inefficiency of switching cars in a railroad yard. The sticklers among you will notice that that oval center beam flat car was not built until 1976, and I said I was modeling 1973. And what can I say? We take liberties because we think certain cars are very cool, and those oval BN lumber cars are pretty cool. So we run them even though they're, quote, out of era, unquote. See if you can find any other cars that are out of era. There are a few, not too many, just enough to keep it interesting. All right, it's time to do something a little more interesting. I think we're going to have an inbound train. There it is. I believe this is a local train called the Oiler, which went up and worked all of the different oil terminals between Seattle and Everett, as well as other local work. And it's finally arrived after having spent several hours during the operating session switching cars.
Yeah, well, I learned from the best. Learning how to do one of those. I learned from Scott.
And I don't know exactly why, but they took the C track, which is the last arrival departure track on the right there, and they just kept going down the yard. Very slowly and carefully. And eventually they stopped and they brought the engine back to the engine terminal, which I thought you'd like to see. But first we have to wait for this train to make it all the way down to the other side of the yard. See, now the caboose is back in the sunshine after having been underneath that bridge. I have the layout lit by a bunch of track lights, LED track lights. They used to be halogen in the old days. And it creates the effect of sunshine, and they're all set at an angle. So you can see we have a shadow on the engine that's coming towards us, that's coming from the halogen track light to make it look like it's in the sun. There on the left, you can see the Jeep that came off that local train is now moving back towards the engine terminal, where it will get serviced for the next run. Goodbye. Okay, now we're going to have some exciting action in the Bayside yard. You can see Brian Elch up there trying to manage this yard. I've speeded this up so it won't take too long. There was a train on the right-hand side working the Delta yard on the, off to the right, which you can't see. And Brian's getting ready for a meet to occur in his yard. He's basically parking the switch engine off so that both the main and the siding are available. And look why he needed to do that, because he had two trains coming in from opposite directions, and he had to make room for them. He also had to position the cars that were needed in the right track so they could make a quick pickup. And there was a problem there where the train came in without stopping, and he had to stop it manually to avoid a collision. I told you this is reality model railroading, right? Now, I'm not sure what this train... Oh yeah, this train is picking up and dropping off cars. So there it's dropping off a couple of cars. And I don't know if it's going to pick some up or if it's just going to take off. We'll see. Looks like it just took off after dropping a couple cars. Now, a few minutes later, a northbound train comes in, and I think Brian maybe is going to work that train from the back. Uh-oh! Look at that. We had another train. It must be that the engineer on that first train did his drop-off on the other end of the yard. And if you rewind the tape, you can probably watch that a little more carefully than I did. This is an example of the kind of thing that goes on. You've got to work two trains from opposite directions and hope that a third train doesn't show up because you don't have any room for it. Well, there's a train on the main line. I don't know why it's backing up. This is the eastbound main line heading up towards Skykomish. And off in the far left, you can see a southbound train heading across the Skagit River towards Everett. Well, that was just some highlights of a 4-hour operating session with 12 people in the room. I hope you enjoyed seeing them, and you'll come back and look at other videos on my channel. There are quite a few of them, and most of them are like this, shots from highlights, a few mistakes, and information occasionally, some of it correct and some not. Anyway, for now, this is Burr Stewart wishing you much fun with trains.
Where are you going with that train anyway?